The year is 1837. Catherine Elizabeth Brewer Benson has just stepped foot into Georgia Female College, where she'll become the first woman in the United States to receive a higher education. Let's skip to 100 years later, 1952. A bunch of white guys just published the first DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And now it's 2024. Simone Biles just won her 11th Olympic medal, the most of any American gymnast. At this point, you're probably wondering where I'm going with all this information. You see, Simone Biles and I have something in common. We both have ADHD. And although she's a bit further along in life than I am, we struggle with a lot of the same things. As someone who wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until earlier this year, I look back and notice a lot of my past giveaways of the disorder. First of all, I love to talk so much that I came up here to do this today, but seriously, yes, I've always been able to turn in my homework on time and been fortunate enough to get good grades, but I mostly noticed my compensatory behaviors. If I dissociated for 6 hours, I self-sabotaged, drinking a cup of coffee at night to get to that 11:59 deadline. If I couldn't focus, I told myself I was lazy and that I needed to work harder. I eventually realized after bouts of extreme depression that people weren't supposed to live like this, struggling and blaming themselves. What many people don't realize is that ADHD takes a toll on your physical health as well. There were days where I would hyper-focus and forget to have a meal. This is why it's so important to understand the symptoms of ADHD and believe people's personal reports. I'd been to countless doctors, but I was told over and over that I couldn't have ADHD because how could someone with ADHD have good grades or sit still? Through extreme compensation, by believing the words of countless doctors, believing they're simply not working hard enough, and by working until they break. But I'm not just here to talk about myself. I'm here to be a voice for the thousands of people who will live most of their lives without an explanation for their struggles. I'm here because according to the NIH, 44% of people with ADHD develop depression, and 12% of them will attempt suicide. I'm here for the women who get diagnosed on average 5 years after men. The prevalence of ADHD in young boys is more than double that in girls. However, these numbers become just about equal in adulthood. This means that the majority of women who have ADHD are not getting the help they need until after decades of suffering. What's worse is those who do not receive a diagnosis in their youth are unlikely to get one until their late 30s. So why is it that women are getting diagnosed so much later? Let's go back to Benson. Women were not granted the access to higher education until the 1830s, but even for another century to come, it was much less common to encounter a woman pursuing her degree. This put young men in a position of power beside their professors. The field of psychology was rapidly growing in the US, and college students often helped conduct experiments. Thus most, if not all, research on ADHD was conducted based on young men, the same research we use today. It's known that women present more inattentional symptoms, struggling with focus and internalizing problems, which means that they blame their problems on themselves and don't tend to outwardly show the stereotypical symptoms of ADHD. Hyperactivity and impulsivity often manifest in switching topics in the middle of a sentence or interrupting people while they talk. Although these are much more subtle signs, the diagnosing criteria remains the same between genders. We need to call for representative diagnosing criteria that doesn't leave certain demographics without the help they need. The field of psychology must become more inclusive, bringing girls and women into psychological studies so the DSM becomes truly a manual for everyone. We need to understand that neurodiverse people do not walk around with a label on their heads. Diagnoses provide people with a validation for their struggles and an access to help. A diagnosis doesn't change who someone is or how you should treat them. Neurodivergence doesn't take one form, and even an Olympic gold medalist can face internal struggles you may not expect. Treat everyone you meet with kindness because you never know what struggles they might be facing. And maybe then, the girl who never shut up in middle school can get the help she needs to be the next Simone Biles.